Hey there, explorers. Welcome to Curious Sparks, the show where we dive into the coolest, most exciting topics that you love, like monster trucks and yeah, even Barbie dolls. Yep, it's all here. So here's how it works. Each episode is like a mini adventure. We uncover fun stories, discover amazing facts, and honestly, just explore together. And, well, I'm your guide on this wild ride. You can call me Max Velocity. But wait, did you know? Curious Sparks is all about you. That's right. Every time you tune in, you're helping me on this journey of discovery. Isn't it cool to think of yourself as part of this adventure? So, ready to ignite that curiosity and dive in? Let's go. No holding back. Hey everyone, welcome back to Curious Sparks. I'm Max Velocity, coming to you from Inventon, where my hands are honestly always a little bit soapy because, well, I love experimenting, especially with things like bubbles. You ever notice how every time you blow a bubble, whether it's teensy tiny or absolutely gigantic, it's always round? No cubes floating around, no pyramid-shaped bubbles, just perfect, shiny spheres. So, what gives? Why are bubbles always round and never, like, bubble squares? Let's break it down. There's this magical thing called surface tension. That's what pulls the outer skin of water molecules together. Imagine all those molecules holding hands super tight, kind of like you and your friends during a really wild game of Red Rover. I mean, I guess that's what people still play? Anyway, soap joins the party and helps those water molecules stretch out and trap air inside. Here's where surface energy kicks in. The molecules all work together to use the least amount of energy possible, and the shape that does that? Yep, the sphere. Turns out, round shapes have the smallest area for the biggest inside volume, so it takes less effort for the bubble to hold together like that. If you were at my Inventon workshop right now, I'd totally dunk a wire shape into some soapy water and show you. Actually, this is something you can try at home. Take a loop made from a pipe cleaner or even a bent coat hanger and dip it in your soapy mixture. If you try to stretch a soap film over a square or triangle frame, it'll always sort of smoosh itself into mini curved shapes wherever it can. That's surface tension doing its thing again. It just won't settle for a corner when it can be smooth and round. I always tell people, nature doesn't waste energy. And that's why you never see a cube-shaped bubble floating down the street. Well, unless someone invents one, but so far, it hasn't happened. This is kind of like when we explored crayon pigments in our last episode. Remember how molecules arrange themselves to make cool colors? Molecules love being efficient. And for bubbles, efficient means round. Okay, since we're already bubbling with excitement, I want to talk about some of the wildest bubble records out there. People get super creative, not just with bubble size, but with all sorts of bubble challenges. For example, there's this record for the world's largest free-floating soap bubble, made by a guy named Alan McKay. Seriously, this thing was longer than most buses, like, if you saw it floating down Main Street, you'd think you were dreaming. I mean, I always forget the exact measurement, but it was over 90 cubic feet. That's a lot of bubble. There are also records for most bubbles stacked. People literally try to float one bubble on top of another, like stacking pancakes. Only way harder because, pancakes don't just burst if you poke them the wrong way. Oh, and someone once broke the record for the longest bubble chain. That's a whole bunch of bubbles attached end to end, kind of like a jelly bean train. Wonder if you could color them like jelly beans. Maybe that's for another episode. And this one cracks me up every time. The biggest human bubble. That's when they literally put a person inside a giant bubble. At a festival here in Inventon, I saw them try to break the local record by popping as many bubbles as possible in 60 seconds. I lost count, but my shoes were totally covered in soap by the end of it. It was loud, messy, and hilarious, one of my all-time favorite science memories. Sometimes, hearing about these records makes you want to try your own challenges, right? Maybe someone out there listening will be the next bubble champion. Just don't try to fit your family car inside a bubble. Trust me. Even here in Inventon, I haven't seen that work yet. Speaking of trying things for yourself, let's move into something you can totally do right now, DIY bubble experiments. You don't need any special gear, just some dish soap, water, and if you really want super strong bubbles, add a little corn syrup or glycerin. I usually go with about 1 part dish soap to every 5 parts water, and just a splash of the sticky stuff to make your bubbles last longer. Stir it gently so you don't get a bunch of foam at the top. Here's a challenge for you, spark seekers. See if you can create a crazy cool homemade bubble wand. You can use pipe cleaners, drinking straws, cookie cutters, or even shape something out of old wire hangers. One time, I made a bubble wand out of a colander, and made dozens of tiny bubbles at once. Not my neatest experiment, but definitely one of the most fun. Let's talk about bubble troubles. Ever notice how sometimes your bubbles pop way too fast? That's usually because the air is dry, or your hands are a little too oily. Try wetting your hands before you catch a bubble, and do it on a really humid day if you can. Bubbles love moisture. If they're still popping quickly, check if your soap mixture is getting old or a little too bubbly at the top, and mix up a fresh batch. And hey, experiment until you find what works best. That's what science is all about, right? So, get creative, test out your own recipes, and maybe challenge your friends to see who can make the longest lasting bubble. I'd love to hear about your wild creations, so send them my way if you can. Alright, that's all for today's Bubble-tastic episode. Keep that curiosity popping, and I'll see you next time for another adventure on Curious Sparks.